As we continue to follow developments under the Gold Dome, as the Georgia State Legislature moves towards the end of the session, that means we're getting closer and closer to true crunch time under the Gold Dome. We've already made it through crossover day, and coming up next is sine die before you know it, and that is the final day of the legislative session. There are a whole lot of bills we are following. One of them has to do with the public's access to police body camera footage. For more on this, we want to bring in right now Nora Benavidez with the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. Nora, thank you for your time here. I know your organization has also been following this legislative effort closely as well. Tell us more about this proposal and where the First Amendment Foundation stands on it.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with you, Zach. You know, SB 482 has gone through a few different versions, and what we're seeing now is a mix of various things that would limit open records and open government. Most concerning is the request requirements now that anyone who wants to get a video of law enforcement would have to include those names first and last of anyone in the image or the video. They would also have to go in person and submit this request to the corresponding law enforcement, and they'd have to do it with a notarized document. Those each are barriers that I think would affect the media, could affect individuals and the public, as well as attorneys who might work on or take on police accountability cases. So we at the First Amendment Foundation are deeply troubled by the ways that this bill currently restricts public access. It isn't just body cams. It could be surveillance footage. It could be any number of videos that law enforcement agencies keep that the public or the media like you might have an interest in.
And Nora, there's a lot to unpack here and a lot to dig into. Let me ask you this off the top. I know that some lawmakers who have expressed support for this legislative effort have said this is in response to a number of websites that request this kind of footage en masse and then post it online using it sometimes for what you might call entertainment purposes. Other times it's used in a way to get people to then pay those sites money to get the videos taken down. Lawmakers have argued, at least some of them, that this legislative effort is an attempt to curb that kind of usage of body camera footage. What do you say in response to that?
Well, I think that's a great question, and that's a very legitimate concern. The industry surrounding mugshots and other body cam or imagery and video is ripe for us to consider and for lawmakers to consider. But that's not what this bill does. This bill limits the public's access and the public's ability or ease with which it can request documents, videos, images. And so if we want to go after the industry that is currently forcing individuals to pay them to take mugshots down or other images and videos, that's separate from what this bill now does. This bill drastically changes the way Georgia's open records law would operate. And that's really why it's concerning.
Let me ask you one more question on this component of the conversation, and then we've got a whole lot more to talk about here. This is an important bill and worthy of the attention that it's getting. But as we're talking about these online sites and these online actors, I mean, let's call it what it often is. These are sites that are purveyors of tragedy porn. They post these videos and mugshots, and they use it for entertainment purposes. That's a big difference between what legitimate news organizations do and use body camera footage for. They're two very different components of this conversation. How would you propose lawmakers thread that needle if that is the goal, to prevent the online tragedy porn purveyors from getting access to this stuff, but also ensure that the public and the press does have access to use it for legitimate journalistic purposes?
You know, when SB 482 first was introduced, it was really what was called a mugshot bill. It tried to do various things to your question about people and the industries who have these images and post them and then force people to pay them to take them down. When the bill reached crossover day just a couple of weeks ago, language was added in that also now includes law enforcement video. And that radically changed the way the bill can be read. And so I think there are two different solutions here. One is for SB 482 and the sponsors of that bill to remove the language of law enforcement video. That kind of broad language would limit your ability, my ability as an attorney, and the public's ability to access a whole range of videos and images. Then there's the question, I think, separately of what to do with this industry of those companies that buy up and force people to pay for mugshots. And from a First Amendment perspective, I actually think that there's an equally troubling issue here that if we don't have any ability to know who has mugshots or who's even been arrested, there's a concern that people could actually get caught up in the criminal justice system and we would have no idea. And so there are some much more nuanced changes that I would suggest, and I think we want to propose, as we have in previous sessions, that there are time restrictions for how these companies operate and the ways that they can post and when they have to take down such images. But there are really two distinct issues with SB 482, and that's what I want to leave people with, that there's this broader, very troubling problem of the law enforcement video requirements now. And then there's the separate issue of mugshots. So I think we have to take those as separate things because they're really doing different issues, and they're honestly changing the Open Records Act in different ways.
You take us well into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is Georgia's Open Records Act. Compared to a number of other states across the country, the Georgia Open Records Act is generally more broad in what it allows reasonably easy access to in terms of public documentation. But correct me if I'm wrong, this is not the first effort under the Gold Dome in recent years to tighten the Open Records Act here in Georgia.
Probably one of my favorite questions. And one of the reasons that the First Amendment Foundation was created was to protect open government and transparency. I think that, when we know as a public what our government is doing, we build trust between civilians and lawmakers, between elected officials and those that they serve. The beating heart of our Open Records Act is really to help keep those accountable that are supposed to be serving us. And so there have been many attempts throughout the years to introduce, even pass restrictions on our Georgia First Open Records Act. And part of what we do at the First Amendment Foundation is monitor what happens at the Capitol, work with lawmakers closely to help advance legislation that really maintains the principles of the First Amendment and upholds that core tenet that open government is the heart of what makes this state so wonderful.
There's the old saying that sunshine is the best disinfectant, and that at its core is the real backbone of a lot of what journalists, a lot of the heart of Georgia's Open Records Act. If people watch 11 Alive News, if they watch our work, they have seen how impactful making sure the public can see this kind of footage can be. But Nora, I want to ask you from the Georgia First Amendment Foundation's perspective, how important is it that the public does still have access and the ability to see that police body cam footage?
It's incredibly important for the public to have all kinds of videos and images about police conduct. We've seen in recent years that there have been tussles, large-scale protests, civilians who encounter police, and when there's this question of what happened, where is the violence, who are the various actors at play, it's the public's ability to understand and access videos and images that clarify those questions through our Open Records Act. And the media plays such a crucial role in that, being able to get footage, such as you might do, and then cover those incidents, those crises, those moments. If it weren't for you then explaining for folks and breaking down, here are the various players in a given situation, I don't think the public will sometimes understand what's happening. And we are in a moment of intense political tension. We are seeing rising violence across the country, acts of various sorts in other states. And so I think this is the moment when we have to double down on open government, not restrict or close off or limit what the public can have access to.
Nora Benavidez with the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. Nora, thank you much for your time and your perspective. We appreciate it.
Thank you.